My name's Jason Smith. I'm an ex-sapper of the Royal Engineers who suffers from PTSD. I served in Gulf War in '91 and I served in Bosnia in 1994. I've had 3 lots of treatment through the Charity Combat Stress, stabilisation course, 6-week trauma course and a 2-week anger management course. I've had various treatments of medication which I've tried. They've not always worked, so I've had to come off them, go on new medication. But I'm finally thinking that I've reached a point where the medication is working for me. So earlier this year I took part in another expedition which consisted of a 3-week journey across Europe down to Gibraltar, and we basically crossed the Sahara Desert in 350-pound cars. It was an experience for me. I'd never been on anything like that before, and off the back of that I made some great friends whom I travelled to an overland exhibition where I met Billy McLeod, who told me about this expedition, and I showed interest and here I am. When I found out that I was offered a place on the VIA Overland expedition, I was a little bit apprehensive. I knew how difficult it was on the last expedition, you know, being out your comfort zone and being put in difficult situations, but on the plus side I was put into teamwork environments that I'd missed since my service days. So yeah, I was very excited and apprehensive at the same time about taking part on this expedition. So obviously the initial journey down to the south coast consisted of me getting on a train. I don't like travelling on public transport, so there was, you know, apprehension and anxiety there initially. On reaching London Euston, the train arrived late. There was a little bit of confusion and a little bit of a standoff, which thankfully for me the police understood my condition and ushered me into a taxi, which then took me to VIA Centre at Andover. So yeah, there were 1 or 2 issues. On getting there I was welcomed, obviously not knowing the guys that were taking part. Yeah, anxious, but all in all it's been great to be sort of tucked under the wing of a charity again and taken on a trip, basically that hopefully, and I'm quite positive, will do me a lot of good. The day after arriving, obviously the vehicles hadn't been totally finished. There were jobs still to do, so I was thrown back into a maintenance mechanical environment with the guys. First job being helping to change a turbo on the Defender. It was great getting hands-on again, learning, well not learning, but using the experience, what I've learned over the last 20 years or so in and out of maintenance jobs. So yeah, it makes me feel good being part of a team where my skills actually play a part and make a difference. One of the greatest points for me was the fact that I've got certain skills. When certain situations arose, I was able to work alongside the reamer mechanic, the engineer mechanic, jump straight in there, hands-on, and it gave me a sense of purpose, to know that, you know, with my skills and me helping out the other guys with the skills, kept us on the road and kept us going. when certain situations arose, as they do when I'm back home, before I came on this trip, I was very explosive. I have an angry personality. I know that's the downside to having PTSD, especially with myself. So this trip's actually put me in certain situations again where I've actually stepped back and before reacting thought about what sort of implications would arise if I reacted in a negative way. So I'm learning to extend my fuse before explosion as such. So I'm lowering my glass level so that it takes longer for my glass to overflow. Doesn't always work. There are times where I do have to just walk away, take a deep breath, think about it a bit more, but all in all, I'm seeing positive reactions to being on the trip. So during my treatment with combat stress, we used to call it the Holly Bush bubble, because whilst you were learning coping strategies and techniques of how to deal with certain situations, there weren't actual elements to put you in a test environment. This expedition has done that for me. It's tested me to the limit, and it's made me put those coping strategies into place. It's made me think about ways of dealing with certain situations more, and from what I've noticed so far, there's been positive results all the way. So on this trip, being put into stressful situations is testing, but it's how we deal with those situations that makes the difference. Everybody has probably seen the pictures on Facebook and thought, oh, they're having a great time, a jolly, you know. It's not as jolly as it looks. There's stressful situations in city traffic. There's stressful situations turning up to camp late, trying to set up camp in the dark, people not pulling the weight, having to chase other people around to do certain things, people taking certain pieces of equipment from under your nose when you need it, that split second. So there's a lot more stress involved than what I think people understand from the photographs and from the the comments put on social media. So it's basically it tests your patience, but my patience is actually getting better because of the trip, because of the dealings with certain negative actions of other people, either not pulling the weight or not doing what they're supposed to be doing at the right time. So it's making me accept things more than I did before I came on the trip. I think the most stressful situation that a lot of us were put in was when one of our vehicles left a back road track in Bosnia. We just heard a crashing noise and realised that there was a vehicle missing. It rolled down the hillside, but it was the actions of everybody, the amount of urgency. Everybody sprang into action. Everybody shot down the hillside, made sure everybody was okay, turned the vehicle back on its four wheels, and we even managed to recover the vehicle from a hillside orchard and tow it to the nearest, what was basically a Bosnian hamlet, where the people there just couldn't welcome us enough and help us enough. For me, having served in Bosnia, there was a certain amount of anxiety, but with the way that the people dealt with us, it still took an hour or so for me to get comfortable with the people around me and the fact that I was still in Bosnia, but it was positive from my point of view. So in the hamlet of Parsovici, where the Bosnian people, they gave up their homes for us, so we had somewhere to sleep. They fed us. It would normally take quite a long period of time for me to be comfortable around the Bosnian folk, but there was also the fact that some of them themselves were Bosniaks and had served during the conflicts throughout the 90s, and once they found out that I'd served there back in 94, it just sort of we embraced each other, because at least we were still here to sort of we were still there to make relations after the conflict. After the accident with the Discovery, we went back into Croatia and set up camp, but myself, Billy and Greg, as part of the trip, went back to Gorney Vakuf and Bugojno, where I served in 1994, not only to hopefully kill a few demons, but to visit the memorials that had been placed there for guys that we lost whilst we were there. Baz in Gorney Vakuf. It was a real experience to go back there and pay my respects. If we stopped at Thomas Lavgrad, also known as TSG, there was a camp there, and we pulled up outside and we were looking through the fence, and I noticed that there was a guy across the road watching us. So I went over to speak to the guy, and it turned out that he'd served 11 years as a sniper in the Bosnian army, and the relations straight away was so positive. He was so happy that I'd come back to see the place, to see the improvements that had been made due to our peacekeeping duties there. He invited us for drinks the following day, and he was just so happy himself to know that us as British UN peacekeepers hadn't forgotten about Bosnia. That made me feel like the job that we went to do back in 94 was a success. They had every respect for us. Obviously, while we were there, we didn't know who had respect for us and who didn't, but this fella clearly had a lot of respect for us and showed that very positively. So a guy that I had treatment with up at Hollybush, very good friend of mine, Harry Marshall Senior, one of his major traumas happened in Gorney Vakuf, and just through me visiting and keeping him posted through social media and messaging him directly, unbelievably, I've actually helped him by proxy, just by being there, visiting the places and letting him know that the town that where he served back in the 90s is now a thriving community and everybody's living happy lives. Some of the positives on this trip are obviously some of the places that we've been to see. The off-roading sections through Bosnia and Albania were fantastic. Really brought the team together. There was a lot of positivity within the group. Probably the biggest disappointment was Italy, but I've been to countries on this trip that I've never been to before, and it's really opened my eyes to some of the places. So there's been many elements to this expedition. Probably one of my favourite places that I visited was the Ardennes forest, overlooking Bastogne, where obviously the 101st Band of Brothers fought. Some of the best drives were probably the coastal roads, the Amalfi Coast, the south of France drive that we did on the way to Robert Lawrence's residence. The Italian cities are just bonkers to drive in. They can get you angry so easy, but at the same time it gives you an element of comical value. Just laughing at the hand gestures, and that really got the lads perked up a lot, because you know, as mad as they were getting at our English driving, we were just laughing about it all, which is a great positive way of dealing with situations that I wouldn't normally deal with in that respect. One of the best moments, I have to say, was meeting Robert Lawrence MC and staying at his residence in France with along with his wife Maz and his friend Peter, who was an ex Royal Green Jacket. You know, there was a few beers had, there was some fantastic conversation, and to be quite honest, I was absolutely overwhelmed with the welcome that we got, the hospitality that we provided, and the stories that Robert had. Absolutely unbelievable. To think that he lost such a large amount of his brain due to being shot through the head, and he's such a fantastic fella. He is a patron of Veterans in Action, I have to say. Yeah, fantastic experience to meet such a great fella. So I'm hoping to stay involved with Veterans in Action on my return. Obviously I have a certain amount of skill set that is useful for redoing these vehicles, redoing the vehicle that we've got to pick up back from Bosnia. But as for negativity, I can honestly say I'm not feeling any. I've had a lot of time to think on this trip, and my intention is to go back and really make a difference to my life by doing positive things, keeping myself busy, keeping myself active, if that's at all possible with my physical ailments that I've got at the minute, but improving relations. Yeah, I would not be thinking this way if I hadn't have taken part on this trip. I would still be sat ruminating and making matters worse up here. I'd like to thank all those people that spent a lot of time previous 10 months before setting off working on the vehicles. I'd like to thank all the sponsors, all the donations, all the grants that were provided to enable this expedition to get off the ground and actually take place, because in this day and age it's so difficult trying to get that support, trying to get that financial backing, unless those people providing the monies to help know of the condition and know the difficulties that veterans have to go through on a daily basis.